field in 1991 as a summer job. Hailing pipe on a workover rig, running completions for Union Pacific Resources back when they were in business. And I'm still, 34 years later, I'm still on my summer job. It's taken me around the world. I worked 27 years overseas. I worked in the North Sea, continental Europe, West Africa, North Africa. Gosh, I couldn't name them all. I've been to 103 countries around the world. Haven't worked in all of them. Some of them were for fun, but I've been around the world a bit. I lived 15 years in Bali, Indonesia. I worked for companies Boots and Coots, Wild Well Control, formed my own company right in the middle of COVID, which is something that's really smart that oilfield hands do. We wait to the worst possible time to start a company, and that's what I did. We incorporated in Singapore in 2020. In 2021, in November of 2021, I took off and went to Nigeria on a blowout for a customer that called us. Killed that well. Was flying back home. My mom in Houston had to have a heart valve replaced. So I flipped around to Doha, Qatar, and got to Houston, and hadn't been in the States in nearly 4 years. And Mom always liked to come to Bali to see the grandkids. So I hadn't been back for a while, and I got COVID locked out and couldn't go home, and was kind of stuck in the United States for a while. Had really no intentions of being here. I lived in Bali on a golf course, got a view of the Indian Ocean. My goal was to work 2 or 3 wells a year and play golf and go to the gym the rest of the time. In January of 22, the crane geyser blew out, the one that Texas Monthly did the work on. The Railroad Commission told the landowner that it was a water well. Some other landowners informed the Railroad Commission that it was an old Gulf well, Cortez well. And at the time that the landowner was going to be responsible for it, I was called. I was sitting in Houston not doing much, and they said, "Would you come help this landowner with this blowout?" And I said, "Sure." They said, how much will it cost?" And I said, "Fly me out, put me up, feed me some Allsups burritos and some Dr. Peppers, and give me what I need to work with, and we'll call it even." In the meantime, they found out that it was a Chevron well, and but I came on out, and I probably up to that point hadn't made 3 trips out to West Texas in my career, in my life. And I started looking around the Antina Ranch and some of the problems that were happening around Tubbs Corner in that area. And I couldn't really put my finger on it at the time, but I knew something wasn't right. I continued to work international. I went to another blowout in Nigeria in July, offshore in the Niger Delta. In July of 22, when I returned back to the States, we started excavating plug wells on the Antina Ranch. To date, we've excavated 150 on that ranch out of the possible nearly 400. 120 of them belong to Chevron, and they're all leaking. There's all problems with these wells. The first 7 that we dug up in September of 22 were leaking either oil, gas, or produced water, or all of the above. I had actually believed that we were going to have a 25% fail rate on digging up these plug and abandoned wells. We're well over 90%. I don't think there's a well out there on that 22,000 acres that's actually plugged properly. Fast forward, the landowner filed a lawsuit against Chevron in December of 22. We continued our investigation by excavating, water sampling, soil sampling. We recapped the wells. We started monitoring pressure. These wells started to build pressure. As most of us know, a plugged well should have 0 pressure. These wells, some of them will build up to 1,200 PSI. Several well over 100 PSI. There's some with negative pressure, which means that the well is on a vacuum and flowing subsurface. Some of the wells, when we first initially excavated, were flowing 10-pound brine, which fresh water weighs 8.33 pounds per gallon. This water that was coming out of the well was fully saturated brine, weighing 10 pound, 10.1 pound per gallon. Salt was falling out of it. That was my first real interaction with the Railroad Commission. reported a couple of the wells, they came out, they looked, and they took off, and we never saw them again. This continued. I got asked by the Libertarian Party last year in '24 to run as a Libertarian candidate. I had no intentions of running for office. I'm not a politician, I'm a well control specialist. I like to work. But they offered me a seat at the table, and I said I wasn't gonna raise any money. I wasn't gonna campaign, I wasn't gonna go around the state. They said that's fine, they needed 2% of the vote to stay on the ballot for 10 years, and I said I'll do my best. And so I went ahead and threw my name in the hat, and I ended up, I think, with 2.6 or 2.7% of the vote. But the number doesn't really tell the whole story. I had no idea of the impact that I was gonna make on people. Had a guy reach out to me and said he hadn't voted in 20 years, but he went ahead and got off the sofa and went and voted just for me, just because he thought that I could actually make a change. And I got a lot of feedback from that after the election. I had no intention of ever running again. A lot of people have asked, and a lot of people have encouraged me to run, and my old saying is, well, I'm kicking that dog around, we'll see what happens. Some events happened in June with a deposition that I had to give in the Chevron litigation where out of the 120 wells that Chevron's on the hook for, their attorneys only had me discuss 2 of them. But they drug my children into the deposition and into the litigation, my relationships, my personal finance, my company partners. The corporate attorneys have attacked me throughout this entire process. Laura Briggs, some of you know her from Facebook. Laura Briggs had a well blowout. It took over 30 days for the Railroad Commission to respond and put a rig on the well. I believe they were nearly 3 months into it. They cemented up the stream. They never properly plugged the well. They cut the wellhead off. They covered it up, drove away. I was out there today, and her pasture's just covered in salt. Plastic still in the ground. Pipe and sucker rod still left in the pasture. There's no end game. Some folks over in East Texas, there's an operator with 73 open violations with the Railroad Commission. He applied for 2 permits for a solid waste disposal. Against the Railroad Commission staff advice not to issue the permits, the commissioners went ahead and voted and gave this guy 2 brand new permits. They are in the Cypress watershed, which is very environmentally sensitive over there. It's just south of Caddo Lake. If anybody's ever been over to Caddo Lake or seen pictures of how beautiful it is, and it's just north of Toledo Bend Reservoir. And in fact, the tributaries and the river that run through this area where they're gonna put their solid waste disposal site is, all of those run into Toledo Bend, which is also another area where people and communities get their groundwater. One disposal site in particular is 1,200 yards from a community water well. And they've been fighting this through the Railroad Commission, through legal action, and they've just been kind of told tough. The folks up in the Panhandle with the wildfires, a lot of folks lost everything. It was one of the biggest wildfires ever in the history of Texas. And some folks down in South Texas are having problems. So what we're experiencing out here in West Texas firsthand is happening all over the state. And the Railroad Commission has, for a lack of, and I'm in a Baptist church, so I'm gonna try to use some nice words. They have foregone their duty to protect the citizens of Texas, and they have become cheerleaders for the oil and gas industry. Let me say this and be very firm. I am not anti-oil and gas. It has fed my family for 4 generations. It's taken me around the world. It has provided a wonderful, wonderful career for me. But we need to do a better job. And the oil and gas industry does not need cheerleaders. We need adult supervision. And we can't be allowed to run amok to continue to operate the way that we've been operating. And if we don't start cleaning up our act, sooner or later, somebody from Washington DC is gonna get a bright idea, and they're gonna come down here and try to tell us how to run our business. And then we're really gonna be in trouble. So, there's so many factors that I can get into, whether it be produced water injection, how we plug and abandon our wells, pipeline safety. In fact, in Conroe, in a neighborhood, a intrastate pipeline was being run, and a compressor station was going to be built in the middle of a neighborhood. The citizens had to get together and hire attorneys to file a temporary injunction against the pipeline company from putting a compressor station in the middle of the neighborhood. The folks down in Van Horn running a pipeline through them, within a 1/10 of a mile of a neighborhood. I was at a Railroad Commission open meeting when they came and asked for help, and those people had driven in from Van Horn, and they were talked to worse than they were small children crossing the street without looking. The Railroad Commission has forgotten who they work for, and they have forgotten their duty to protect us and to regulate and to enforce the rules of the Railroad Commission. And it's time for change. There's no real experienced leadership. They call themselves oil and gas leaders. I don't think any of them have the oil and gas experience that I have. I like to lead by action. Watch what I do, see what I do, and you can see how I lead. Don't get me wrong, there are some great people in the agency. There's some people that work there that really want to do the right thing. It's not those people that I'm chastising, that I'm calling out. There's some fantastic inspectors that really want to do the right thing. They're not paid enough. I could take a 3-year roughneck that's been pulling slips for 3 years. I could take him and make him a great inspector in a short amount of time. But when he's got a family to feed, when he's got an F-250 truck payment, a boat payment, and among other things, he cannot go to work for the commission for between $40,000 and $50,000 a year and continue the lifestyle that he enjoys. So you're not gonna get experience paying their people what they get. I would like to pay them more. The money's there. The Railroad Commission loves to brag about how they bring in $27 billion a year. So why don't you pay your people? Why don't you bring in some experience? Why don't we do a better job of keeping tabs on our oil and gas operators? We've got to do something about our produced water injection. We inject somewhere in the neighborhood of 23 to 25 million barrels of water a day in the state. Yet we're allowing the industry to draw our groundwater resources down, or surface water resources down, and not just the oil and gas industry in general. When we do have the technology available to recycle, clean up this water, repurpose this water for industry needs. These data centers are coming in, I've been told to use 300,000 gallons of water a day. It would be ridiculous to start growing our fresh water because it's easy and it's cheap. And it makes them more cost effective to use our groundwater other than buying recycled, repurposed, produced water. I can go on and on about numerous things that are wrong with the agency, but I think the most important thing to me is they've forgotten that the people of Texas are here and that they serve the people of Texas. And that's what I plan to do when I get elected. I have no problem living out of a pickup truck with a pair of coveralls on. I actually enjoy that more than starch jeans. It's easier to walk around in. And I plan to be in the field. I'm not house broke. I can't sit in the office. I won't wear a tie. I plan to be out here in the field with the folks, where the work is. Not a lot of work is done in Austin. It's a lot of blah, 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 blah. So the work happens out here, the work happens in the field. That's where I plan to be. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Follow me on social media. If Facebook is the safest. I get really real on TikTok. I blocked my mother from TikTok because she kept sending me pictures of bars of soap every time I said it. So she's blocked, and I thought I was doing a good job till my 14-year-old daughter and her were out having a girls' day, and my daughter said, "Oh, Daddy has a new TikTok," and my mom said, "Well, I can't see his TikToks," and my daughter said, "Yeah, that's because he keeps blocking you, and he doesn't want you to see them." So she snitched on me. So Facebook is saying, Twitter, but if you really want to see real and you really want to see what I'm about, it's on TikTok. It's raw, it's who I am, it's how I work, and you get to see a firsthand glimpse of what I do day in and day out. Was over at a neighbor's looking at a well today with some German TV people. They couldn't hardly laugh in English, but they really wanted to see the failures that we're having, and they want to report this, and they want people to know that yes, we are an industry powerhouse, but we have our own problems too. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. I'll do the best I can. David, I know you've got some.
Well, I know where there's several houses in Andrews that have been built on top of plugged wells. And the people that I knew that lived in those houses, they were never made aware that there was an abandoned well under their property.
This is a huge problem, and it comes up more and more. And a couple of years ago, I was in my hometown, and we used to play baseball in a gas well location. And I went back, gosh, in the early 2000s, kind of cruising through the old neighborhood, and somebody had built a house over that well. And that was the first I'd ever heard of that it was even allowed. 2 weeks ago in Odessa, just by the HEB on the loop, some people reached out to me from social media, and they had what looked like a flow line had ruptured in an alley between some houses. And I think they reached out to me on a Friday. I happened to be in San Angelo that weekend, and so on the way back to Monaghan's, I went to Odessa and met with them. There's a plug well in that lady's backyard. The Railroad Commission's GIS system is not that great. I mean, it'll tell you there's a well there, but on the Antenna Ranch, we were looking for a well, and it ended up being 400 yards down the fence line from where we were actually digging. So if you flew a drone over, it looks like a mass grave. There's no bodies in it. It's just where I've, been digging with a backhoe looking for this well, and we dug and dug and dug, and we ended up having to bring surveyors in to use imagery from the 50s and 60s and to cross-reference it and go put stakes in the ground to locate some of these wells. So their system is not accurate, which is a huge problem. And the fact that people are building houses on top of this thing. I know in McCamey, I went and met with a guy, and we found out he was fixing to build a house, and he had his forms ready to pour his slab, and this was on a Saturday. And we found a well right up underneath his garage, and they were coming to pour concrete on Monday. And we asked him to take a breath and step back and move it, and he did. He listened to us, and he moved his forms and reformed everything just because of the fact that these things can't be trusted. And is there a way to? I know that there's several people in the business of trying to sell this information to real estate agents to help the agent be more declaratory to their clients, but they don't want to know that because they want to sell the house.
Well, I don't think, where I'm talking about, I don't think the real estate agents knew it either. It was just, and it was a Texaco well. They were all over Andrews.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
And there's several houses probably that I've seen that I know where if there was a well there, probably 6 or 8 houses. They're built right on top of those plugged wells.
It's a huge problem. How do we address that without having the proper data and the proper location of all these plugged wells just by looking at a map? I mean, there's wells out here God doesn't know about. I mean, to be honest, back in the day, they drill a well. If it hit, they'd get a permit. If it didn't hit, they'd skip the rig and go drill another one. same with pipelines. You know, we found pipelines that were abandoned in place that, you know, we made an 811 call and they came out and marked everything, and we started digging and I hit a pipeline. You know, it didn't rupture, it didn't damage, but, you know, when you get the bucket of a backhoe and you start picking up dirt, a 200 foot of dirt moves, you know, that'll draw you up a little bit. So,
Well, and what we need to worry about here is what I'm worried about is the groundwater being ruined
yes,
because we're running out.
that's
All
right.
these circular irrigation systems from here to Nebraska, this aquifer we pull our water from is starting to drop. I mean, it's been dropping for 50 years since they started irrigating. And now with the high pressure injection of all this produced water, that's what you're seeing a lot of, ain't it?
Exactly, but we're seeing it's kind of threefold. Number one, it's the over injection of produced water. Number two, it's poor plugging practices. And I'll argue with anybody and say, well, we do it different today. No, you don't. We plug wells the same way we were doing 50, 60 years ago, all right? Nobody likes to pay for a funeral, and that's what you're doing when you plug a well. It's a funeral, that's it, it's done, you're not gonna make another nickel out of it. You wanna do it as quickly and as cheaply as possible, cut as many corners as you can to get away with it. Cut the wellhead off, cover it up, drive off, and check the box. So, you know, there's materials out there, I use some in Saudi, in several places around the world, some polymers and resins, that might be a good, replacement for cement, but they're expensive, and they're not railroad commission approved. You know, there's a landowner in Pecos County, he has 240 orphan wells on his ranch. And this would be a great proving ground for new products, for polymers and resins. You could take, of the 240, you could take 24 different products, divide them up in 10 well packages, and plug 10 wells with this one, plug 10 wells with that one, plug 10 wells with that one. And then you can run some tests and see which ones work better, see which ones are easier to work with. And then you can put a cost to it. Because, you know, I've dug up 6 wells that the Railroad Commission plugged under their orphan well program, and those 6 leak. So what they're doing is not right. So why do we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again? And giving the contract to the cheapest bidder. You know, back in the day when they plugged wells, it was more of a salvage operation than it was plugging. They'd get the pump jack, the rods, the tubing, and whatever production casing they could get out of it, dump a little cement on it, cut the wellhead off, cover it up, and that's it. You know, we're still basically doing the same thing nowadays.
I've seen them, when I worked on a pulling unit, we put, the bags of, like, the gel came in
Mm-hmm.
and stuff them down that casing 5.5,
So you'd have a retainer.
and then
Oh,
put cement on
Yeah,
top of that,
yeah.
and that's good.
No, we found, I don't know, with untold number on the antenna racks, pulled bags out of them once we cut the cases off and recapped them. You know, it was, the tough thing about this and what bothers me about it is there is a problem and nobody's recognizing that there's a problem. And I think early on, if they raise their hand and go, yeah, this is a problem, we need to look into this. I don't think it would have blown up in the 3 years that it has. And I don't think the agency would be taking as much slack. You know, you wouldn't have agencies like Bloomberg and the Chronicle and Reuters, and everybody's hammering on the agency, and they're deflecting and gaslighting and deny. But I'm living proof, and it's out there on social media of what I've seen and what I've been doing. And there's no denying it. Pipe does not lie. A politician will lie to you, but pipe don't lie. And that pipe out there that I've been dealing with is telling me the truth. And we've been doing a poor job of plugging our wells. So our grandkids, our great-grandkids, guess what? Guess what they're gonna be doing? And like I said, I'm 4th generation. I've got a 14-year-old daughter that kind of wants to follow in my footsteps. She's spent a lot of time with me. She asks the right questions, but is she gonna be plugging wells? Is she gonna be digging up plugged wells and forcing a state agency or the third largest oil company in the world to have to come back and plug them correctly. Are we gonna be doing this from now on till Armageddon? Or are we gonna start realizing that this is a problem and start doing it right? Anybody else? Did I talk over anybody's head?
I just kinda wanna know what the plan is for the wells on the river, cause I know that that's technically not Railroad Commission.
That's a tough one, and I've looked into that. So there's wells in the Plaquemine River. Anybody know where Kilgore is? So down Highway 42,
I do.
Kilgore, you saw the derricks, they're still up. I drove by there a few weeks ago. They have them, just south of Grand Falls on the Plaquemine River. They're leaking. I've seen several of them. The issue is the Railroad Commission, does not, that they say that it's not their jurisdiction, that it's the Army Corps of Engineers because it's in the riverbed. And the Army Corps of Engineers, that's an oil and gas well, it's the Railroad Commission. And this is what we get. And it doesn't matter, it's an oil and gas well, it's a Railroad Commission. Get out there and look at it. I got a call shortly after the Toya blowout last year from a family that was, he works in the oil field, he was a roustabout. His H2S monitor, the work was going off at 10 parts per million in his house. From a tank battery 300 yards away. He called the Railroad Commission. The Railroad Commission said, he reported the tank battery. They came out, it's 300 yards away from his house. They said it's a TCEQ problem. So he calls TCEQ, and they said, oh, it's coming from a tank battery, it's a Railroad Commission problem. You know, there's no interagency communication in this deal. It shouldn't matter. If it's oil and gas, guess what? It belongs to the Railroad Commission. And we don't need lawyers, and we don't need hearings, and we don't need meetings to go out and fix something. Go figure out what's wrong, and go out there and fix it, and worry about who's gonna pay for it later.
Especially something like that.
Sure. So you're laying in your house at night, watching a ball game, Monday Night Football, and you're breathing in lungfuls of 10 parts per million H2S because two agencies can't get their head around who's responsible for it. I might have taken up too much time.
That's all right, we appreciate it.
Thank